He saw just another soldier, a woman lost in the mundane task of cleaning a rifle. But a tiny, impossible detail on her uniform would shatter his entire understanding of modern warfare in the next 5 seconds. The air in the armory at FOB Nightingale was thick with the scent of gun oil, sweat, and ozone, a familiar cocktail that General Marcus Thorne had inhaled for over 30 years. It was the smell of readiness. Humvees rumbled outside, casting fleeting shadows through the high, dusty windows, while the rhythmic clatter of metal parts being disassembled and cleaned provided a steady, percussive soundtrack to the afternoon. Thorne, built like a bulldog with a chest full of ribbons that told the story of a career forged in conflict, moved with an air of absolute authority. At his side, Major Kenji Tanaka, his aide-de-camp, matched his pace, tablet in hand, ready to note any deficiency. Thorne's gaze swept across the room, a practiced, all-seeing scan that missed nothing. A loose strap here, a speck of carbon there. His men and women were professionals, but professionalism, he knew, was a muscle that required constant exercise. In the far corner, almost obscured by a tall rack of M4S, a lone figure was hunched over a workbench. A soldier, methodically breaking down a customized Barrett M107A1. Thorne noted her focus, the precise, almost surgical way her hands moved, laying each massive component of the anti-material rifle on a clean mat in perfect sequence. She was just another cog in the machine, a detail in the larger portrait of his command. He was about to move on when a glint of silver on her collar caught the light. He took a half step closer, his curiosity piqued. Most soldiers wore standard marksmanship badges. This was different. Smaller, more discreet. His eyes narrowed, focusing on the tiny, engraved inscription beneath a stylized rifle. 3,200 meters. The number didn't register at first. It was an absurdity, a typo. He blinked, leaning in so close he could see the individual threads of her uniform. It was no mistake. 3,200 meters. A cold knot formed in his stomach. He straightened up, his entire demeanor shifting from casual inspection to sharp, focused interrogation. He jabbed a finger toward the badge. "Soldier." His voice was a low growl that cut through the armory's din, silencing nearby conversations. "That's not just impossible, it's a fantasy. Where did you get that badge?" Staff Sergeant Anya, Echo, Petrova looked up from the rifle's bolt carrier group. Her eyes, the color of a winter sky, were calm and showed no trace of intimidation. She followed the general's accusing finger to the small pin on her uniform, and a flicker of understanding, perhaps even weariness, crossed her face. "With all due respect, General," she said, her voice even and professional, "the engagement is a matter of classified record." Her composure was a stark contrast to Thorne's aggressive posture. It was a wall of quiet confidence he hadn't expected to hit. The simple dismissal of his authority, wrapped in perfect military courtesy, only stoked the fires of his disbelief. "Classified?" Thorne scoffed, the word dripping with sarcasm. "I'm the commanding general of this entire sector. There is no classification that keeps me from verifying a claim this extraordinary." He turned to his aide. "Tanaka, give me her service record. Now." Major Tanaka's fingers flew across his tablet. "Sir," pulling up Staff Sergeant Petrova's file now. The armory remained quiet, the tension palpable. Soldiers at nearby benches pretended to be absorbed in their work, but their ears were tuned to the unfolding drama. Tanaka's expression shifted from neutral efficiency to one of quiet confusion. "General, her file is unusual." He cleared his throat. Graduated top of her class at Fort Benning Sniper School, setting new marksmanship records. Completed the high-angle shooting course, advanced ballistics, and special operations target interdiction course. Her list of qualifications is extensive. "Get to the point, Major," Thorne snapped. "That's the problem, sir," Tanaka replied, turning the tablet so Thorne could see. Her operational history, every deployment for the past 5 years, it's all redacted. Just a solid block of black with the word classified stamped over it. "I've never seen a file this heavily locked down at a non-commissioned officer level." The wall of secrecy was real. The brilliant training record only made the redacted mission logs more infuriating to Thorne. It was a puzzle he couldn't solve, a direct challenge to his authority. His frustration boiled over. "I don't care what's redacted," he snarled at Anya. "If you can't tell me where you made this shot, you'll explain to me how. From a technical standpoint, convince me that a 3,200-meter shot is anything more than a soldier's tall tale." Anya Petrova carefully placed the firing pin she was polishing onto the mat. She straightened up, her posture shifting from that of a mechanic to a lecturer. The armory, for a moment, became her classroom. "General, a shot at that range is less about marksmanship and more about applied physics," she began, her tone measured and devoid of emotion. She wasn't defending herself. She was stating facts. At 3,200 meters, you are not aiming at a target. You are aiming at a precise point in space where the target and the projectile will intersect in approximately 8.5 seconds. Thorne and Tanaka exchanged a quick, uncertain glance. Anya continued, her hands gesturing slightly as if tracing invisible trajectories in the air. "First, you have to account for gravity, which is the simplest variable. But then you have the Coriolis effect. Over that distance, the rotation of the Earth will cause the bullet to drift significantly. The direction and magnitude of that drift depend on the latitude and the azimuth of the shot." She paused, her gaze meeting the general's. "Then there's wind. Not just the wind in my position, but the wind across the entire 2-mile flight path, which can vary in speed and direction at different altitudes. You have to read mirage, vegetation, and dust signatures at multiple points to build a comprehensive wind model." She picked up a small, inert .50 BMG round from the bench, holding it between her fingers. Air density is another critical factor. It's affected by altitude, temperature, and barometric pressure. A 10-degree temperature change can alter the bullet's impact point by several feet at that range. You also have to calculate for spin drift, the gyroscopic effect of the bullet's rotation, and the Magnus effect, where the bullet's spin create a pressure differential in a crosswind, causing it to lift or drop. Thorne, who considered himself knowledgeable in battlefield dynamics, found himself completely out of his depth. He was listening to a level of technical mastery he'd only ever read about in theoretical papers. Tanaka was furiously taking notes, his expression a mixture of awe and disbelief. Finally, Anya concluded, placing the round back down, "You have to consider the transonic barrier, where the projectile drops below the speed of sound, causing ballistic instability. You have to ensure your calculations account for that chaotic transition to maintain any hope of accuracy." She fell silent. The masterclass was over. Thorne was speechless, the foundation of his skepticism riddled with the bullets of hard science. He needed proof. "Tanaka," he said, his voice now strained, "set up a range. I want a demonstration." 2 days later, the desert air shimmered over the extended range facility at FOB Nightingale. The heat was a physical presence, pressing down on the handful of staff officers General Thorne had brought to witness what he now privately referred to as the reckoning. A steel silhouette target, man-sized, was a barely visible speck in the distance, positioned at exactly 1,200 meters, the maximum safe distance the base range could offer. Even at this range, less than half of Anya's claim, the challenge seemed immense. Anya Petrova operated with the same unhurried, methodical calm she displayed in the armory. For nearly 2 hours, she worked. She set up a Kestrel weather meter to measure wind and atmospheric data. She used a laser rangefinder to get a precise distance, then confirmed it with MIL calculations through her scope. She lay prone behind the massive M107A1, her body perfectly still, becoming an extension of the weapon system. She wasn't just a soldier with a rifle. She was a scientist conducting a complex experiment. Thorne watched through a high-powered spotting scope, his knuckles white as he gripped the tripod. He saw her consulting a ballistic computer, her fingers tapping the screen, inputting the dozens of variables she had described. He watched her adjust the turrets on her scope with tiny, precise clicks. The preparation was an intricate dance of technology and human skill. Ballistic solution calculated and set. Anya's voice came over the radio, clear and steady. Ready to engage. A hush fell over the observers. Thorne held his breath, his eye pressed to the spotting scope. Anya's breathing slowed, becoming rhythmic. The world seemed to shrink down to that single, distant target. The explosion of the Barrett was a physical shockwave, a deafening crack that rolled across the desert and slammed into their chests. The rifle bucked violently, but Anya's body absorbed the recoil flawlessly. Thorne watched the vapor trail of the bullet arc across the shimmering air, a fleeting silver line against the brown landscape. For a long second, nothing happened. Then, a puff of dust erupted from the center of the distant target, followed a moment later by the faint, metallic clang of the impact. Target hit! The range officer yelled into his radio, his voice cracking with excitement. Center mass. Confirmed hit. Thorne didn't need the confirmation. He had seen it. A perfect shot. The officers around him murmured in amazement, their skepticism evaporating in the desert heat. But Thorne felt no elation. He felt a profound, unsettling chill. He lowered himself from the scope, his face a mask of grim realization. She had done this incredible feat of shooting with effortless precision, and it was only a fraction of her true, documented capability. He looked over at Anya, who was already preparing her rifle for cleaning. He knew then that he had to see the file. He had to know the full story behind the soldier who could bend reality from 2 miles away. The following week was a bureaucratic war for General Thorne. He pulled every string, called in every favor, and leveraged every ounce of his rank. Accessing Anya Petrova's complete service record required clearance from Special Operations Command and a direct authorization from the Pentagon. Each request was met with digital walls and polite but firm refusals. The resistance only fueled his determination. Finally, after a heated, encrypted video conference with a 3-star general at SOCOM, the file was unlocked for him, for a period of 12 hours, accessible only from a secure terminal in his office. As the files decrypted, Thorne understood the secrecy. It wasn't a service record. It was a ghost story, a collection of impossible missions performed by a phantom. Anya Petrova, call sign Echo, was a member of a clandestine unit so secret it was officially denied to exist. They were deployed for missions where failure would have catastrophic strategic consequences. Her assignments read like a geopolitical thriller, neutralizing terrorist leaders in fortified compounds without leaving a trace, providing overwatch for CIA operatives during hostage exchanges in hostile cities, disabling the engine block of a moving vehicle carrying a dirty bomb from over a mile away. Then he found it, the 3,200-meter engagement. The mission was codenamed Operation Archangel. A high-level diplomat was being held hostage by a splinter cell in a mountainous region of Afghanistan. The captors were in a remote cave complex, surrounded by sheer cliffs, making a conventional assault suicidal. They had announced their intention to execute the diplomat at dawn. Anya and her spotter were inserted by helicopter onto a neighboring peak under the cover of darkness. For 6 hours, she lay in the freezing cold, tracking the lead captor. The shot was deemed a 1 in a million chance. The report detailed every variable she had described in the armory, but with horrifying specifics, gusting crosswinds, a plunging temperature, and the target appearing for only seconds at a time. Her single shot, fired from 2 miles away, eliminated the leader, creating enough chaos for a special forces team to storm the cave and rescue the diplomat unharmed. The after-action report, written by the 4-star general overseeing the operation, concluded with a single sentence. Staff Sergeant Petrova's actions did not just save a life, they prevented a war. The file was filled with similar accounts. Thorne felt a sense of vertigo. He had been walking among giants without even knowing it. His final authorization allowed him a brief call with General Rostova, a legendary figure in the intelligence community. Marcus, her voice was raspy through the encrypted line. You need to understand. Soldiers like Sergeant Petrova are not just assets. They're strategic weapons, as vital as a carrier group or a satellite. Their existence gives us options that no enemy could ever anticipate. She is a scalpel in a world of hammers. A few days later, General Thorne found himself walking through the armory again. The familiar sounds and smells were the same, but his perception had been fundamentally altered. He saw Anya Petrova in the same corner, at the same workbench, performing the same ritual on her Barrett M107A1. She was no longer just a soldier in the background. He saw her now as she truly was, a guardian, a silent professional of the highest caliber, whose quiet dedication was the bedrock of national security. He approached her bench. This time, there was no arrogance in his stride, no challenge in his eyes. He stopped a few feet away, simply watching the precise, practiced movements of her hands. She looked up, her calm, gray-blue eyes meeting his. She knew that he knew. A silent understanding passed between them. An acknowledgement of the hidden world she inhabited and the burden of the skills she possessed. General Thorne gave a slow, deliberate nod. It wasn't the nod of a superior to a subordinate. It was a nod of profound respect, of one warrior to another. Anya returned it with a barely perceptible inclination of her head before turning her focus back to her rifle. No words were needed. Thorne walked away from the armory with a new weight on his shoulders. He understood that the true strength of his army wasn't just in the thunder of its tanks or the roar of its jets. It was in the quiet corners, in the unassuming soldiers who spent their days in meticulous preparation for moments that the world would never know about. These were the true guardians, the silent professionals whose impossible skills were the last line of defense against chaos. Their dedication wasn't for medals or recognition, but for the mission itself. Have you ever discovered that someone you barely noticed possessed capabilities that far exceeded anything you imagined? Share your story in the comments below. And please, comment respect for all the quiet professionals like Anya, who stand watch on the frontiers of what is possible. If you found this story inspiring, please like, share, and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.